Black Maid hears twins crying in the basement. What she finds down there changes everything. Danielle Harris never imagined that her simple life as a house cleaner would put her at the center of the darkest secrets of the Whitmore mansion. Invisible to the eyes of the elite, she would become the only light in the path of two children marked by pain and the coldness of a stepmother who hid her cruelty behind a perfect smile. But when Jonathan Whitmore, the stern and distant patriarch, begins to see beyond appearances, buried truths come to light and no one inside that house remains the same. Between revelations, threats, and unexpected feelings, everyone's life changes. Forever. And what once seemed impossible gains strength in the face of courage and love. Before we begin today's story, I want to invite you to join me. Leave a comment down below telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far these stories are reaching. And if you enjoy intense love stories full of emotion and plot twists, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss a single episode and you'll be helping this space grow more and more. Now get ready, because what you're about to see today will touch your heart. The night in Buckhead had a glow of its own, as if every garden light was competing with the stars. The Whitmore mansion rose with light marble columns and large windows, reflecting a precisely trimmed lawn and a still reflecting pool. In the distance, the soft sound of sprinklers mixed with the scent of jasmine. An iron gate opened with a brief creak, and a simple sedan drove in without drawing attention. Danielle Harris stepped out of the car with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what steps to take. She was a black woman with luminous brown skin, straight hair pulled into a low bun, immaculate despite the long hours of work. Her deep brown eyes seemed to see beyond the surface, and her slender hands were slightly dry from daily contact with cleaning products. Her uniform was simple: black pants, a white cotton blouse, and a gray apron with deep pockets where she kept claws, gloves, and a small flashlight. On her feet, soft sneakers that made no sound on the marble floors. The guard. At the booth, a heavy-set man with a radio clipped to his shoulder tipped his cap in greeting. "Good evening, Danielle." "Good evening, Mr. Cole. I'm starting in the East Wing today. I'll finish quietly, as always." "The house appreciates the silence," he replied with a tired half-dash smile. Danielle scanned her badge on the interior panel, and the lock clicked sharply. Inside, everything felt on pause. Heavy curtains, contemporary sculptures under focused lighting, a glossy black piano reflecting the ceiling lights like a dark lake. The main room had a marble floor and a light gray rug made of soft fiber. On the glass table, a bouquet of white lilies still smelled fresh. Danielle rolled up her sleeves and took a deep breath, as if preparing for a choreography. Her movements had a calm rhythm, picking up a forgotten glass, straightening books on the shelf, turning off an unnecessary light dot at the top of the staircase. Two silhouettes appeared in the hallway shadows. Ethan and Sophia Whitmore, 8-year-old twins, watched from the upper landing with the curious attention of children seeking refuge. Ethan had soft brown curls and honey-colored eyes that caught the light. He wore striped pajamas and held a metal toy car with a bent wheel. Sophia, with the same golden eyes and slightly fuller curls, wore pale pink pajamas and clutched a small stuffed fox, its ears worn from love. Sophia whispered, as if revealing a secret, "She's here." Ethan nodded, eyes still fixed. "She always makes the world feel lighter." Danielle noticed their presence by the reflection on the glass tabletop. She didn't startle. She just raised her head and smiled, a smile that seemed to warm the cold walls. "You two, bedtime. The bus won't wait tomorrow." Sophia stepped down 2 stairs, tiptoeing, testing boundaries. "Just 1 minute?" "1 minute." Danielle agreed, lowering her voice. "A promise is a promise." On the way to the kitchen, she noticed a glass of juice left on a sideboard. The sugar ring around the rim sparkled under the lights, clear evidence of small, hurried hands. Danielle picked up the glass with a towel, careful not to leave prints, and walked to the marble kitchen counter, turning on only the light beneath. The cabinets. The kitchen was spacious, with a double-door fridge, spotless counters, and a silent analog clock nearing 11. She rinsed the glass, wiped the droplets, and then pulled a small packet of oatmeal cookies wrapped in wax paper from Hamas. Her bag. Ethan peeked around the door, curious. "Did you eat dinner, Danielle?" "Enough," she replied, with a calm tone that left no room for pity. "But you two need sleep." She opened the packet, broke a cookie in half, and handed over the pieces like she was sharing a talisman. "Half now, half. Tomorrow. Deal?" Sophia gave a shy smile. "Deal." A pair of firm footsteps echoed down the hallway. Jonathan Whitmore appeared, wearing his suit without a tie, jacket open, the soft light of the aquarium reflecting in his steel blue eyes. He was a tall, athletic man with dark brown hair combed back, broad shoulders, and the precise look of elegant exhaustion. The phone pressed to his ear, his voice was short and direct. "No, numbers aren't opinions." "Send the revision by 6, he said, ending the call with a tap on his earpiece. He barely noticed the kids. His eyes brushed past Danielle like she was a quiet, efficient wall. "Good evening," he murmured, polite out of habit. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore." Danielle replied with restrained respect. Jonathan had already turned when he noticed Sophia's shy smile and the half cookie in her small hands. His eyes quickly moved between the stuffed fox, the kids, and Danielle. He seemed like he wanted to say something but simply adjusted his watch, a steel piece that gleamed like a commitment, and headed toward the office. Danielle turned to the kids. Now teeth brushed, short prayer, and bed. "Doctor's orders from the heart," she said playfully, knowing discipline could also be comforting. Ethan held the edge of her apron for a second. "Will you stop by our room?" "I will," she promised, gently, brushing his curls. "As soon as I finish the living room." She returned to the main room, turning off a muted TV someone had left on. She picked up a crumpled drawing near the sofa, two stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. In crooked letters, "Me Soph" and "Ethan." Danielle carefully smoothed out the paper and carried it to the kitchen, where she discreetly stuck it to the side of the fridge with a magnet, out of guests' view, but within reach of the eyes that mattered. In the bedroom hallway, the wall sconces cast an amber light like night lamps. Danielle stepped into Ethan's room first. Shelves lined with metal spaceships, rocket posters, and blue sheets embroidered with constellations surrounded the bed. She pulled the blanket up to his chest, fluffed his pillow, and whispered, "Safe travels, astronaut. Tomorrow you launch into math." Ethan chuckled so softly it felt like a secret. "I'll land on the moon before the bell rings." In the next room, Sophia smelled of lavender and stationery. There was a dollhouse with doors that really opened and a string of star-shaped fairy lights. The stuffed fox was already in its honored spot on the bed. Danielle pulled the curtain just enough to let the moonlight in. "Stars on, nightmares off," she said, tucking a curl behind the girl's ear. Sophia held Danielle's hand for a moment. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" "Whenever the clock says it's night and the house needs to breathe," she answered, waving her hand as if commanding the air. When she left the room, Danielle walked toward the east wing. With each step, she turned off a light, straightened a slightly crooked picture, picked up a toy forgotten behind a vase. On a side table in the hallway, she found a small glass ornament shaped like a star, broken at the tip. As she picked it up, a thin cut opened on her finger. A drop of blood appeared, discreet as a ruby. Danielle wrapped her finger in the handkerchief. She carried in her pocket, held her breath for a second, and resumed her work. There was something in the way she kept moving forward, a silent determination that gave the hallway a new sense of meaning. In the office, closed off by sliding doors, Jonathan was speaking more quietly than before. The light from the screen cast shadows on the shelves lined with hardback books. He typed quickly, not noticing the soft hum of the handheld vacuum Danielle had turned on across the room. As she passed by the glass, their eyes met for an instant. No words were exchanged, just a vague acknowledgement, as if both of them knew they were sharing the same night, but in different worlds. Back at the stairs, Danielle paused and listened to the silence that hovered. A silence full of little things. The rhythmic breathing of the children, the subtle hum of the air conditioning, the ticking of the kitchen clock. She looked up toward the landing where Ethan and Sophia had stood earlier and smiled to herself. Then she went down to the hall, checked that the doors were locked, put away the clean cloths, and logged her exit in the app. Before leaving, she walked over to the fridge and touched the drawing she had rescued with the tips of her fingers. The paper gave a slight crinkle back, as if in gratitude. "See you tomorrow," she said to the house, in a whisper that felt like a promise. And she left as lightly as she had come, leaving behind an invisible order, the kind only those who watch with admiration can notice. Morning brought a different tone to the Whitmore mansion. The sun filtered through the white linen curtains, flooding the living room with a soft golden glow. But behind that flawless scene, a new heaviness lingered. Danielle had already gone, and the house felt colder without the quiet warmth she had left behind. Victoria Hale Whitmore came down the stairs, the metallic sound of her heels clicking on the marble. She wore a fitted beige dress, a pearl necklace, and a silk scarf tied at her neck. Her expensive perfume lingered in the air like a trademark. Her smile was rehearsed, the kind that shines in front of cameras and at business dinners, but fades when no one is watching. Jonathan was already at the table, with the newspaper folded and a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. He only raised his eyes to check the headlines on the tablet beside him. He seemed absorbed, his mind always occupied with contracts and numbers. Victoria glided over to him and kissed his cheek with a practiced gentleness. "Did you sleep well, darling?" "Well enough." "The board will be demanding today," he replied, not noticing the shadow forming in her eyes. Meanwhile, Ethan and Sophia slowly walked into the dining room. Still in their pajamas, they carried with them a certain hesitation. Their alert eyes instinctively searched for Danielle, but found only Victoria, already positioned beside the table. Her gaze fell on them like a disguised blade. "Good morning, children," she said, her voice too sweet to be real. "Sit up straight, Sophia. Ethan, don't bring that toy car to the table." Sophia straightened quickly, shoulders shrinking. Ethan pushed the car behind his chair, but both of their eyes stayed down, as if trying to shield themselves from an invisible storm. Jonathan raised an eyebrow, sensing the tension, but went back to his tablet without stepping in. Victoria poured herself a glass of orange juice and a crystal flute, her movements calculated, every gesture performed to appear perfect. But all it took was one detail to crack her mask from the inside: the light in the children's eyes when the subject turned to Danielle. "Danielle told us a story yesterday," Sophia said, her voice soft as if revealing something precious. She said, "Stars that are on chase-away nightmares." Ethan added with timid enthusiasm, "And she called me an astronaut. Said tomorrow I'll land on the moon." The crystal in Victoria's hand almost slipped, but she masked it with a stiff smile. The glass touched the table a bit harder than necessary. "How curious," she murmured, looking directly at the children. "Vivid imagination, isn't it? An employee should do her job, not play mommy." Her words cut through the children like silent knives. Sophia clutched her stuffed fox in her lap for comfort. Ethan, eyes lost, pushed his plate forward without the courage to eat. Jonathan finally looked up. "Victoria, don't be harsh." The children need someone who makes them smile. She looked at him with trained sweetness, but inside, a growing poison. Burned. Of course, darling. I just think we should be careful about outside influences. When Jonathan left hurriedly for work, taking his leather briefcase and the usual concerns with him, Victoria's expression changed. Her smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, almost cruel look. She approached the children, bending over them with a delicacy that hid venom. Listen closely. That Danielle, she's not your friend. She's here to clean, nothing more. If you start depending on her, you're going to be disappointed. Sophia swallowed hard, tears already clouding her eyes. Ethan tried to protest, but Victoria's delicate yet firm hand rested on his shoulder, heavy as iron. You don't want to make me sad, do you? The children's silence was the answer she wanted. They lowered their eyes, choking back tears, learning to silently swallow what broke their hearts. Victoria stood up satisfied, returning to herself, as if she had won a small invisible battle. But as she turned, she noticed a detail on the side counter in the kitchen. The child's drawing Danielle had rescued the night before, discreetly, pinned with a magnet. 3 figures holding hands under a yellow sun. The crooked letters still shone. Me, Soph, and Ethan. Blood boiled in her veins. With a quick gesture, Victoria ripped the paper down and crushed it in her fingers. She looked back to make sure the twins were watching, then threw the drawing into the stainless steel trash can. We don't need garbage lying around, she said, in a sweet voice, as if it were a lesson in manners. Ethan clenched his fists under the table but said nothing. Sophia bit her lip until she tasted blood. Their hearts felt too tight for their small chests, and in that moment a silent anger began to grow inside them, not against Victoria, but against the pain of not being able to run into the arms they knew waited for them in Danielle. The clock struck 9. The house returned to silence. But inside the twins' hearts, the wounds opened by their stepmother began to grow too deep to ignore, and Victoria, climbing the stairs with slow, steady steps, had only one thought: Danielle was a threat. And if it were up to her, that woman would never become part of Jonathan's children's lives. The mansion was drowned in silence. Outside, the wind quietly rustled the trees in the garden, making shadows dance along the white walls. Danielle Harris walked the halls with bucket and cloth in hand, turning off forgotten lights as usual. Each of her steps was light but carried an invisible weight. She sensed that tonight wouldn't be like the others. While arranging books in the office, she heard a muffled cry coming from upstairs. It was a small sound, but sharp, the kind that cuts through walls like a plea. Danielle dropped the cloth and climbed the stairs quickly, leaving behind the whisper of the vacuum she had just turned off. At the end of the hallway, next to the tea hallway, window half covered by linen curtains, sat Sophia. The little girl, curled up against the wall with her knees hugged to her chest, let the tears fall freely. The stuffed fox, tossed just a few inches away, looked like it had been ripped from her hands. Danielle crouched down calmly, approaching like someone who doesn't want to scare a wounded bird. Her voice came out low but firm. Sophia, what happened? Sweetheart? The girl lifted her tear-filled golden eyes. She was breathing through sobs. Mommy, Victoria said I'm a burden, that I'll never be good enough, and that Daddy only puts up with me because he has to. Danielle's heart tightened. She picked up the stuffed animal from the floor and placed it back in the girl's arms. She gently ran her hand through the wild curls, wiping away the tears from her soft face with her fingers. Listen to me, Sophia. Nothing she said is true. You are special, you are loved, and your light is bigger than any shadow they tried to put over you. Sophia cried harder and threw herself into Danielle's arms, searching for the only refuge that seemed real. Danielle held her tight and lovingly. rocking her like someone holding something too precious to break. At the end of the hallway, a half-open door reflected a shadow. Jonathan Whitmore stood still. He had come home earlier that evening, tired from meetings, and stumbled upon that unexpected scene. His hardened gaze, trained to judge, began to soften. Jonathan saw something there he had never seen in his wife. Genuine tenderness. The way Danielle held the little girl wasn't duty or performance. It was pure love, quiet, asking for nothing in return. He took a deep breath, trying to hold back the emotion rising in his throat. But he couldn't stop his eyes from staying fixed on the scene, as if discovering a secret the mansion had been hiding for a long time. Still in Danielle's arms, Sophia whispered through her sobs, "Promise you won't leave me?" Danielle pulled the girl closer to her chest. "I promise. As long as I'm here, you'll never be alone." That was when Jonathan stepped back, the floor creaking softly beneath his leather shoes. Danielle looked up, surprised, but said nothing. She simply met her boss's eyes in the dim light. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The maid holding the child, the powerful man unable to move, caught by what he was seeing. Jonathan looked away, slowly closing the door he had been watching from. But it was too late. That image was already burned into his mind, opening cracks in the wall of coldness he had built around his heart. In the hallway, Danielle was still cradling Sophia, unaware of the impact she had just caused. Their embrace seemed to light up the mansion's walls, as if the silence of the house, until then cold, had received a spark of life. The next morning, the mansion carried on with its rehearsed luxury routine, but something in Jonathan's gaze had changed. He remembered the scene from the night before when he found Sophia crying in Danielle's arms. That memory stayed with him through breakfast, mixing with the smell of fresh bread and the clinking of crystal glasses. Victoria, as always, wore a perfect smile while talking about the week's social commitments. The gala dinner will be essential to seal new alliances. I want the twins looking flawless. They need to learn how to behave in public, since at home they're complicated. Jonathan lifted his eyes from the newspaper, his brow furrowed. Complicated? Sophia was just crying yesterday, and you weren't there to comfort her. Funny how, in Danielle's presence, they seemed more at peace. His tone made the air at the table heavier. Victoria kept her posture, but her green eyes revealed a flash of irritation. Jonathan, please. We can't be fooled. Children always get attached to staff. It's temporary. He closed the paper slowly, as if thinking carefully before striking. Temporary? I saw how she held our daughter. And I saw something in Sophia's eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Peace. Victoria set her juice glass down firmly, not losing control of her voice. You don't understand. That woman could use that affection to take advantage. And you, of all people, should know how dangerous it is to trust too much. Her words echoed inside him like the reflection of old wounds, but Jonathan said nothing. He stood, grabbed his leather briefcase, and left. Behind him, the immaculate table and a wife with a stiffened smile. Later, in his office, Jonathan was still thinking about the scene. While analyzing investment reports, Ethan's laughter echoed through the house. He stood up, drawn by the rare sound. When he reached the living room, he found Danielle sitting on the carpet with the twins. Ethan was showing off a toy rocket, while Sophia was drawing stars on a piece of paper. If you believe, you can reach the moon, Danielle said with a genuine smile. Nothing is impossible when your heart is brave. Jonathan stood at the doorway watching. There was a different energy there, something that filled the room with life. His children seemed to bloom in Danielle's presence. Their eyes sparkled. Their smiles were light. Fear was hidden. Ethan held up his drawing to show his dad. Look, Daddy. Danielle said I can be an astronaut, and Soph's going to be an artist. Jonathan took a deep breath, feeling something he couldn't control. He admired Danielle's courage, the sweetness with which she treated his children, but with that came an unexpected sensation, a warmth that confused him. He looked away, as if trying to erase the thought. Danielle stood up quickly when she noticed his presence. "Mr. Whitmore, I was just keeping the kids entertained. I promise I'm not avoiding my duties." Her voice trembled slightly, as if afraid. She had crossed a line. Jonathan looked at her seriously, but his eyes softened in a barely noticeable way. "Go on. Seems like they're doing much better like this than when they're living in fear." A heavy silence settled in. Danielle looked down, unsure how to react. Sophia squeezed her hand tightly, as if to protect her, and Ethan gave her a knowing smile. Jonathan, meanwhile, turned slowly and returned to his office, but his mind was in turmoil. As he closed the door behind him, the truth began to tear through the certainties he had held for years. Maybe his wife had lied. Maybe his children weren't difficult. Maybe the real problem was inside his own home, and against his will, a dangerous flame was starting to grow inside him. Admiration mixed with something deeper for Danielle, the woman he had always seen as invisible. The mansion was wrapped in a tense silence. It was past midnight, and only a few soft lights remained on in the kitchen, reflecting off the light marble countertops. Danielle was finishing organizing the utensils, her hair tied in a bun now a bit loose, her apron marked by the day's work. Her movements were calm, as always, but inside she still held the memory of Ethan and Sophia's smiles from earlier. The sound of thin heels slowly descending the stairs that connected the kitchen to the hallway leading to the living room broke the silence. Victoria appeared, imposing, dressed in a red silk robe that trailed across the wooden floor. Her expression lacked the softness she had worn in front of her husband that morning. Instead, there was a hardness, the kind that carried poison, just waiting to be released. Danielle straightened up as soon as she noticed her presence. "Good evening, Mrs. Whitmore. I was just finishing up." Victoria walked to the counter, resting her hands on the cold marble. Her green eyes locked onto Danielle's, cutting through her like blades. "Don't play innocent, Danielle. I know exactly what you're trying to do." Danielle furrowed her brow, confused. "I don't understand, ma'am. I'm just taking care of the house and helping the children when they need it." Victoria's tone rose, loaded with contained hatred. "Helping? You're poisoning my stepchildren against me. You're trying to steal the place that belongs to me. I won't let a maid take over in my own house." With a quick motion, Victoria opened the side drawer and pulled out a silver-handled knife, gleaming under the kitchen's cold light. Danielle stepped back, her heart pounding, but she stood tall, her eyes locked. "Stay away from the children, you hear me? They're mine. If you ever interfere again, I swear you'll regret it." Danielle took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, even in the face of the threat. "Children aren't trophies, Mrs. Victoria. They need love. They need peace. If I help them, it's because it hurts me to see what they go through." Victoria's eyes sparked with fury, and for a moment it looked like she might lunge. But the sound of firm footsteps echoed in the hallway. Jonathan appeared in the doorway, tall, still in his suit without a tie, his face tired. His eyes widened when he saw the scene. Danielle standing steady, and Victoria with a knife in her hand. On instinct, Victoria turned quickly and, with almost theatrical skill, let out a sharp scream. She threw the knife onto the counter and rushed to Jonathan, grabbing his arm. "Oh my God, Jonathan!" she cried in fake distress. "She tried to attack me. She grabbed the knife and came at me. I had to defend myself." Danielle froze. Her chest rose and fell with fast breaths, but her eyes stayed firm, burning with indignation. "That's a lie. I would never do something like that." Jonathan stood between them, his eyes scanning every detail. Victoria's red robe shook with her performance, fake tears already running down her cheeks. On the other side, Danielle remained still, vulnerable only because of the truth she didn't know how to prove. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jonathan didn't know who to believe. On one side, the wife who had always painted Danielle as a threat. On the other, the housekeeper who, with just a gentle touch, had brought his children's smiles back. Victoria held her husband's face with both hands, forcing his gaze. "Jonathan, believe me, I'm scared. She's dangerous." Danielle stepped forward, her voice choked but steady. "You've seen how your kids have changed with me. I would never raise a knife against anyone. All I do is take care of them." Jonathan felt the weight of the moment. Two worlds were colliding right in front of him, and each choice seemed to carry irreversible consequences. He stood in silence, unmoving, as the tension hung like thunder about to strike. The suffocating silence in the kitchen still lingered, when small footsteps echoed in the hallway. Ethan and Sophia appeared suddenly, their eyes wet, their hands trembling. Seeing their father and stepmother standing over Danielle, the desperation broke through their fear. Sophia ran first, hugging Jonathan's leg tightly, her tears soaking the fabric of his pants. "Daddy, don't believe her. It wasn't Danielle. It was Victoria. She's always mean to us." Ethan, brave despite his trembling voice, added, "She yells, she calls us burdens. She takes our drawings, says we'll never be good enough. Danielle's the only one who takes care of us, always." Their words dropped like stones on the marble floor. Jonathan blinked several times, as if needing to confirm he was really hearing that. His children, so used to staying quiet, now crumbled in front of him with a truth he couldn't ignore. Victoria tried to react. She knelt beside the children, forcing a sweet expression, but the poison in her eyes betrayed her. "Sweethearts, you're confused. Danielle fills your heads with lies just to turn you against me." Ethan stepped away, holding his sister's hand. The two of them backed up, instinctively placing themselves beside Danielle. That simple choice made Jonathan's heart race. Danielle took a deep breath, her voice calm but firm. "I never meant to come between you. I just can't close my eyes to these children's pain." Jonathan brought his hands to his head, like the weight of doubt was about to crush him. The world he thought he knew was starting to crack. "Enough," he said, louder than he meant to. The echo filled the kitchen. He looked at his wife, then at his kids, and finally at Danielle. Victoria tried to pull herself together, grabbing his arm. "Jonathan, you can't believe these stories. They're just impressionable children." But it was at that moment that Sophia, in a barely audible voice, said something that froze the entire room. She said that if we told the truth, you'd never believe us. "Because you love her more than you love us." Jonathan felt the floor disappear beneath his feet. His blood boiled, and for the first time, he saw something behind his wife's perfect mask, an abyss. He took a deep breath, trying to stay in control, and spoke in a firm tone. "Not going to make any decisions right now. I need to understand what's really happening in this house." Victoria tried to protest, but he raised his hand, ending the conversation. Without looking back, he led the kids upstairs. Danielle stayed still, her heart racing, still processing the weight of an accusation that had nearly destroyed her. On the stairs, Jonathan glanced back for a split second. His eyes met Danielle's. No words were spoken, just a silent promise that he would start seeking the truth. Jonathan spent the following days on alert, noticing every detail of the house that once seemed perfect. His children's words echoed in his mind like a burden he couldn't ignore. Sophia's pleading eyes, Ethan's steady tone, Danielle's calm amidst chaos. All of it led him to doubt his wife and search for answers on his own. On a rainy night, while Victoria attended A charity dinner in downtown Atlanta, Jonathan decided to come home early. He asked the security team not to announce his return. He wanted to see the mansion as it truly was when he wasn't around. The kitchen lights were on. Jonathan stopped in the hallway, leaning against the wall, and peeked through the slightly open door. What he saw left him speechless. Danielle was sitting with Ethan and Sophia at the smaller wooden table used only for quick meals. There was no luxury, just a simple plate of rice, vegetables, and chicken that she had brought from home in a glass container. Danielle divided the portion into 3 and pushed one toward each child, keeping the smallest for herself. Sophia, her curls falling over her shoulders, looked at her with concern. "But what about you, Danielle? Aren't you going to be hungry?" Danielle smiled, with that warmth that seemed to soften even the cold furniture. "Don't worry about me. Seeing you two eat fills me more than anything else." Ethan took a bite of the façade chicken, still watching her closely. "You're not like Victoria." "You're real." Danielle brushed the boy's hair gently and lowered her voice. "Promise me you won't let anyone put out what's inside you. Kindness, courage. No one can take that from you. I just want you to grow up knowing you're loved." Jonathan remained frozen, feeling something inside him break, and at the same time, rebuild. It was like he was finally seeing his home without filters, without masks. That invisible woman, so often overlooked, was bringing life back to what he held most dear, his children. Sophia rested her head on Danielle's shoulder, whispering almost like a secret, "I wish you were our mom." The words cut through Jonathan's heart like both a blade and a balm. He gripped the doorframe tightly, taking a deep breath to keep himself from being seen. The security cameras, installed in almost every corner of the mansion, had never shown a scene like that. The truth was right in front of his eyes. Danielle didn't just care for the children. She loved them as if they were her own. A distant thunderclap rattled the windows, and Jonathan slowly stepped back down the hallway, feeling his heart grow heavy. The dilemma was becoming unbearable. As he recognized Danielle's purity, he also felt something start to grow inside him, something he didn't dare admit. When he entered his office, he closed the door firmly and ran his hands down his face. He muttered to himself, low and almost like a confession, "What am I doing? Why didn't I see this before?" That night, Jonathan couldn't sleep. The image of that scene in the kitchen replayed in his mind like a film, forcing him to face a truth that could no longer be erased. As the night wore on, the Whitmore mansion lay in silence. The distant sound of rain hitting the wide windows was the only noise filling the halls. Danielle was still in the kitchen, putting away the last of the dishes, when she heard firm footsteps approaching. Her heart began to race even before she saw who it was. Jonathan appeared in the doorway. No jacket, his tie loose, and his expression carrying something rarely seen in his eyes, vulnerability. He stood still for a moment, looking at Danielle as if searching for the courage to speak. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice softer than usual. Danielle took off her cleaning gloves and laid them on the counter. She stood upright, maintaining a respectful posture, but her gaze showed caution. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore." Jonathan took a few steps closer, placing his hands on the cold marble. He took a deep breath, his eyes locked on hers. "I was wrong. I was wrong for blindly believing Victoria, for not seeing what was right in front of me. Last night, when I saw you with my children, I realized the strength you carry. You don't just care for them. You protect them. You love them." Danielle looked down, filled with a mix of emotion and hesitation. "I never meant to get involved in family matters. I just couldn't stand by and watch those children suffer. They deserve more than silence." Jonathan moved a little closer, and the air between them felt electric. "You made me see something I had lost. The truth, Danielle." My children smiling, truly smiling for the first time in years. I don't know how to thank you. She took a deep breath, trying to stay composed, but her voice cracked. You don't need to thank me. All I did was give them what every human being deserves. Care, attention, love. Jonathan's eyes softened, and for a moment, the weight of being a CEO, a husband, and a father disappeared. He was just a man standing in front of a woman who disarmed him effortlessly. The silence that followed was intense, broken only by the sound of the rain. Jonathan took a step forward. His face was so close that Danielle could feel his warm breath against the cold of the kitchen. He spoke in a whisper, heavy with truth. You're stronger than anyone in this house. And I can't ignore that anymore. Danielle took a slight step back, torn by an internal conflict. Don't say that. I'm just the maid. If anyone hears, he interrupted, firmly but without raising his voice. Not to me. You've never been just that. Danielle's eyes shone with held-back emotion, and in that moment, they both got lost in a silence that said more than 1,000 words. There was no kiss, not yet, but the tension between them was tangible, like every breath was a step towards something inevitable. And then, for a moment, time seemed to stop. Jonathan slowly raised his hand, gently touching the side of her face. Danielle closed her eyes, letting a single tear fall. When she opened them again, she met his gaze filled with something between gratitude, pain, and unspoken desire. Didn't kiss, not yet. But in that moment, a silent pact was born, a love emerging from within wounds, promising to change everything that was yet to come. The days that followed turned the Whitmore mansion into a stage of constant tension. Jonathan, determined to live blindly no longer, began watching his wife's every move closely. He quietly asked the security team for access to the house's internal footage and, shocked, listened to several clips where Victoria mistreated the children when he wasn't around. They were venomous words, whispered low but clear enough to expose her. On top of that, Danielle, without intending to involve herself further, had saved some of the children's drawings with scribbled phrases. Victoria yells she threw away. My toy, Danielle is the only one who listens to me. Small, innocent testimonies that together formed a wall impossible to ignore. That night, Jonathan decided to act. He gathered the evidence in a black folder and waited for Victoria in the office. The atmosphere was heavy, lit only by the crystal lamp on the desk. When she entered, still wrapped in her navy blue silk robe, she found her husband seated, his eyes cold, like ice about to crack. Jonathan, why that face? Did something happen? She asked, trying to sound casual. He opened the folder slowly, spreading papers, printed transcripts, and a few drawings across the desk. Something did happen. I finally saw what's been under my nose this entire time. Want to explain what these recordings mean? These drawings? Victoria tried to smile, but her face stiffened. Oh, please. That's just kid stuff. You're really going to believe messy little doodles over your own wife? Jonathan stood up suddenly, his voice firm, but filled with pain. This isn't about doodles, Victoria. It's about my children. Their pain. And you've been lying to me for years. She crossed her arms, lifting her chin, holding on to the arrogance that had always kept her afloat. And what did you expect me to do? Those kids aren't mine. I'm not going to ruin my life taking on baggage that doesn't belong to me. The words echoed through the office like a slap. Danielle, passing by the hallway with a tray, stopped when she heard it. She didn't walk in but remained silent, witnessing it all without being seen. Jonathan stepped toward his wife, his eyes burning. Say that again, poisoned by her own anger. Victoria raised her voice. I said I never wanted to be their mother. I wore the mask you needed because that was the price to stay by your side. You wanted perfection, Jonathan? I gave it. But I never loved those kids. Never. The impact of her confession was devastating. Sophia and Ethan, who had come down the stairs quietly, heard every word. Sophia's soft sob broke the silence, and Victoria realized too late they weren't alone. Jonathan's eyes filled with held back tears, but his voice was steady. "Enough. Your act ends here. You might have fooled me, but you won't destroy my kids anymore." Victoria tried to approach, reaching for his arm. "Jonathan, I said it in the heat of the moment. I didn't mean it." He pulled her hand off like removing a snake from his body. "Oh, you meant it. And now everyone knows." Victoria looked around, seeing Danielle standing in the hallway and the children at the bottom of the stairs. For the first time, her expression lost its confidence. The perfect mask had fallen, and the house's silence stood as a witness to her downfall. Jonathan took a deep breath and announced, with the cold certainty of someone who no longer allows himself to be manipulated, "Starting today, Victoria, you no longer run this house." Her face went pale, and for the first time, the woman who ruled through lies found herself without solid ground beneath her. The next day brought a different kind of silence to the Whitmore mansion. It wasn't the tense, suffocating silence from before, it was a breath of relief. Victoria had been removed, escorted out of the house under Jonathan's cold stare and the raw pain in the twins' eyes. For the first time, the air felt clean, with no poison hidden between words. Ethan and Sophia ran through the hallways without fear, laughing at simple things like children finally allowed to be children. Jonathan watched them from the top of the stairs, filled with both sorrow and hope. Sorrow for the time he had lost, but hope for the chance to rebuild. Danielle, as always, remained in the kitchen, quietly and respectfully. But now, her steps were lighter, no longer weighed down. When Jonathan walked in, she quickly spoke, her tone humble. "Mr. Whitmore, I know all of this has been difficult. If you want me to leave, so I don't cause more problems." Jonathan interrupted her, firm but with warmth in his eyes. "No, you're not going anywhere. You were the one who gave my children strength when I couldn't. You were the one who brought light to this house when it was full of shadows." She lowered her eyes, overcome with emotion, but he stepped closer and gently lifted her face with his hand. "Danielle, I spent years believing in appearances, in masks. Today I understand that family isn't made from blood or expectations. It's made from love, courage, and truth. And you showed me that." Sophia ran into the kitchen and wrapped her arms tightly around Danielle's waist. "Don't leave us, please. The house is happy now that you're here." Ethan, quieter but with a steady voice, added, "You're our family, Danielle. Even if nobody else accepts it, we do." Tears rolled down her face. She couldn't hold back the emotion. Jonathan, eyes full of tears too, pulled all three of them into a hug, feeling a warmth he had never known, even surrounded by all his wealth. Later that night, gathered in the main living room, Jonathan turned to Danielle with a voice full of sincerity. "I can't promise it'll be easy, but I want to try. Not just as your employer, but as a man. I want to build something with you." Together. Danielle hesitated, her breathing quick, but answered in a whisper full of feeling. "I never asked for anything more than a real home. If it's by your side, I know I'll find it." Jonathan's eyes lit up and he laced his fingers through hers. The room filled with a peace that once seemed impossible. Meanwhile, on the staircase, Sophia and Ethan watched, quietly smiling. For the first time, they didn't feel afraid of the future. The mansion, once a stage for lies, was now becoming a home simple and real. The lesson hanging over all of them was clear. True wealth wasn't in the marble floors or Jonathan's contracts. It was in the love they were finally allowing themselves to live. And so we come to the end of this story full of pain, growth, and true love. But now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Leave a comment with your rating from 0 to 10 and tell me how much you enjoyed it. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, share it with someone who will feel moved too. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one's. And before you go, I've already picked out another story that's even more emotional, one that's sure to touch your heart even deeper. Don't miss it.